See another new morning come. Say it's not a sacrament, tell you that it can't be done. This morning outside I stood, saw a little red-winged bird shining like a burning bush, singing like scripture verse. Made me want to bow my head. I remember when church let out, how things have changed since then. Everything's holy now. Used to be a world half there, heaven second rate had me down. Now I'm walking with Reverend Deer. Everything's holy now.
What an incredibly appropriate song for today's message and this week. Thank you, Tom. That was so powerful and so beautiful. Everything is holy. Everything is holy now. We can just hang on to that. Oh, so we're kind of entering the midpoint of the Lent season. And you're probably feeling it. Anybody out there been a little weepy the last few weeks? That's holy water. Holy water. Kind of comes along with the Lent season, which it's been my experience at this time that veil gets very thin between our earthly journey and our eternal nature. It gets very thin. And others in our lives tend to walk through that veil. We don't always understand it. But we honor that in that journey. It seems to be pretty prevalent this time of year. We've experienced the walking on of Nathalie White yesterday, which was a blessing. My dear friend's husband, Reverend Tom, a few weeks ago. Do all of you have a forever friend? Reverend Therese is my forever friend. I'm so glad she's here. Bob Skinner, a few weeks ago. Eloise Van Ness, a dear friend of mine and one of the members of a founding family in Citrus County. I want to share a little bit of Tom's journey and Eloise's journey here in a minute, but I just want us to take a nice deep breath in and be infused with this wonderful, powerful time of Lent. It's an amazing moment of grace where we can fully realize that everything is holy now. Everything is holy. It's the wonderful month of March, the beginning of spring, the color of spring green. It's represented by the woman of the chalice, Tamar, oh, her strength. Andrew, the disciple of Jesus. But it reminds us that it is not the power of our strength, of our white knuckling through life. It's the internal strength of God that does the work, that has the power of that little sprout to burst through the ice and insist on being here. It's not the strength of that little stem. It's the power within that sprout that does the work. It's the power of the Father within that does the work. And that's what today's message and these whole 2 weeks have been about for me, being reminded that everything is holy now. And do you all know who Reverend Ed Bacon is? I stumbled across him a few years ago because I wanted to watch an Oprah show about Michael Bernard Beckwith. Great friend of Unity, has a huge ministry in California, speaks at our conferences. He's just magnetic, a beautiful soul. And he was going to be on Oprah. Well, he was accompanied with this Episcopalian priest, Reverend Ed Bacon. You know who he is. And I was in awe because they were discussing the outrage that was going on in California with Prop 8. Do you all remember that? About homosexual marriage. And I thought, because there's Michael Beckwith, and I thought, oh, he's going to give a lovely unity perception. And then I thought, the Episcopalian priest is going to give, that part of the Christian faith that thinks that's an aberration or whatever. I was bracing myself. And that's not what happened. Reverend Ed Bacon, who has a huge congregation in Northern California, mainstream Christianity, in front of 6 million viewers, told Oprah, "It is a gift of God to be gay." Oprah went. He said, "Gay children are God's great blessing." She high-fived him. And I took such notice of this, not just because I have been such a friend and ferocious champion for the gay communities for as long as I can remember, since I was a little girl and knew that there was a community like that, but because this Episcopalian priest had the courage, at the risk of a congregation, to stand in his truth and share to the world what God sees. And so I've kind of followed Reverend Ed Bacon through the years, and on Friday, as I was coming to the office, I heard him on the radio. He has a radio show that is just brilliant. And you've heard me say often the unity principle that every moment is holy, every encounter is sacred. We talk about that a lot. Every moment is holy, everything is holy now. But Reverend Bacon said, every second, the sacred is at stake. And if we are not awake to it and aware of it, we miss the blessing in it. That took that to a whole new level for me. Every second, the sacred is at stake. That really called me into looking over, reflecting on those moments that I wasn't awake in the moment of the sacred. And it also caused me to reflect on the moments that I was. And those moments seem really thick this time of year for me. Maybe it's just because I'm paying more attention. And I love how Reverend Therese has been keeping a blessings journal since Tom walked on of how he's been orchestrating everything. It's been miraculous. Bonnie was sharing with me what Nathalie's doing in her life. It's just, if we're paying attention. A few years ago, I lost a very dear friend of mine. We lost a friend and founding member of our Unity Church. And I'm not going to say the term lost. I have to remove that from my vocabulary because we never lose them. I've learned that. They don't go very far. But a few years ago, you all remember our dear Gloria Horning, dear friend of mine, one of my amazing spiritual teachers, just the light of this ministry. She had been a practicing Unity student since the 40s and had this wealth of spirituality and beauty in her. And I remember I was in ministerial training and having to go out to the village a lot, and she had never been able to go. So when I'd come back, we'd catch up on everything about the village. And she'd want to know where I went and what it looked like and what I was doing. And she was quite ill when I went out for one of the weeks, but she was expected to go home the next day. Well, when I landed in Kansas City and got my rental car, her daughter had called me and said she's taken a turn for the worse. And I thought, oh, I hope I get back in time to see her. And I just pulled off the road, and I had some time with her to be in meditation and prayer. And she just reminded me how holy everything is and how everything is perfectly okay. And the next morning, as I was in class, I was very restless, and I'm looking at the clock, and we don't have a break for another 10 or 15 minutes, and I just had to get out of that classroom and call and see how Gloria was doing, and I called, and she had just made her transition. She had just made it, just moments before, and you know how that feeling comes through you, we're human, and I looked up, and there's this circle of birds, and I thought, that's interesting, and I didn't want to go back to class. I decided to cut. Be with Gloria. And I went over, and the village was still asleep. It was this week, those years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, this week. And Kansas City area was still very cold. The trees were bare, and I just sat in front of this bare tree. And before I could even get the words out to Gloria about what this is all about, these 3 birds came flinging to this tree in front of me. They were these little white, furry, I'd never seen these birds before, fluffy, they looked like little round snowman birds with little black stripes on. The three of them just started chirping at me as loud as they could. And I'm like, okay, I'm thinking I'm getting it. I'm telling my classmates. I called Gloria's daughter. Of course Gloria was there with us. That's why I was there, so she could be there with us. And every class, there'd be a little red bird that'd fly by and look in the window, and we'd be, there's Gloria, there's Gloria. She said, if you're present. Well, this year, as I have for the last 11 years, I'm taking Keep a True Lent, Charles Fillmore's wonderful work on how to take a spiritual Lent. I use the same book every year. It's the one I've taken all my notes in. It's a newer version, and I can't find it anywhere this year. I'm looking, I can't find it. Can't find it, and I just grab one of my little books off the shelf. I'll use one of the older books. Doesn't have any of my notes, but I'll use it anyway. So I flip open to the first lesson of Lent, and there's this little cross, and I thought, oh, someone was taking Lent, this whole thing seriously. I wonder who it is. And I flipped open to the front page. Mrs. A.L. Horning, Gloria. Gloria, it gets better. So Gloria's been with me, insisting that I don't go to the old, that I break open the new with her. So this morning I'm coming out and I'm just feeling the presence of Gloria. I'm feeling the birds. I get here and those two turkeys are here again that have been wandering around our we have Charles and Myrtle. Becky has named our two turkeys. You'll see them. I know, Charles would love that. And so I'm coming out and I come in and I'm just filled with Gloria. And I come in and I read. I have this little precious book that Mike Roberts gave me many years ago. And I just flipped to March 11th. If we pay attention to every second, I flip open to March 11th, this morning, just a few hours ago. Think of yourself as my expression of attributes, as a lovely flower. Absorb beauty. As soon as the beauty of a flower or a tree is impressed upon you, it leaves an image on your soul that reflects through your actions. Look for beauty and joy around the world because it becomes a part of you and you give it back to others in the form of a smile or a prayer. Listen to the birds. Take their songs as messages from me. Let it sink into your soul. That too will be given back to you. Listen to the birds. I'm like, thank you, Gloria. Paying attention. Taking time to be holy. Charles Fillmore reminded us, taking time to be holy and having the courage to stand in our truth. The scripture that Charles recommends for this passage is so beautiful. It's from 2 Timothy, which is a very small book. It was written from Paul to Timothy and his little congregation near Thessalonia, but it's such a powerful reminder that the divine is in us every moment and every second. Every second the sacred is at stake because that sacred is in us as we live and breathe. And Paul writes to Timothy, I am grateful to God, whom I worship with a clear conscience as my ancestors did. I remind you to rekindle the gift of God that is within you at all times. Rekindle that spirit. Be of great courage. Be of great courage. The power of God who saves and calls us to a holy calling, not according to our own works, but according to God's purpose. You then, my child, be strong in God's grace. Take strength and comfort. Take time to be holy. As I said, there are some precious souls that have kind of walked on, who I feel embodied this ability to do all as if it were for God, because it is. And that was our dear Tom and my friend Eloise. And these two individuals couldn't be more different. Tom was a contractor and architect in Melbourne for 30 years and went into ministry. Met his beloved Therese, and they journeyed through ministerial school together and all the bumps that go along with that. Tom embodied that spirit. I was reminded last week at his service, he was the quiet one in the class, but when he spoke, everybody kind of, he had that inner strength. And when we were doing our spiritual meltdowns, he was the rock and the anchor. He just had this knowing. He was the one that arranged the trips to the Katrina victims, the Nehemiah projects at the village. It's the contractor there that rebuilt the fountains, the Bridge of Faith, which will be turned on his memorial Maundy, Thursday in April. He was just about to begin building the tower. He embodied that everything is holy now. Being around him, you felt that. And my little friend Eloise Van Ness, did you all know Eloise? Some of you that knew Eloise. Eloise came from one of the founding families here in Citrus County. When I was at the Canning Center, she came every year with her brood. She was the matriarch of this huge family of children and grandchildren and great-children, grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren. She was about this big and just a fireball. But she had this gentle grace about her, and she was very clear that everything she did, everything she taught her children to do was for God. They would come into the Canning Center with all of their buckets, barrels, back trucks full of tomatoes and that they grew on their own farm, and beans. And she wouldn't use the pea shellers. She said that mashed the beans too much. I mean, this was a beautiful invention of the 40s that cut the time of shucking those peas in a fraction. She'd lay out quilts in the hallway of the Canning Center and put all the children there, and they would do the peas. While the older children were doing the tomatoes, they would all stop at 12 o'clock and make fresh tomato and mayonnaise sandwiches and have lunch and prayer. And then they would go about finishing their tasks, and they would scrub that kitchen. I'm talking about 17 and 18-year-old boys with mops, singing and scrubbing and singing and scrubbing. What a brilliant example of sharing with others the power of God in and through you. And I would deliver the tomatoes out to their farm in the afternoon. They'd be out working, and I don't even know if that home had running water. Probably not. It was a very old farmhouse. But that woman had such a spark and such a light, such a leader of this community to show how everything is holy now. To realize that, to take that in and to know that, when you do, your life becomes infused with God's grace. Nothing is impossible or too difficult. We surrender to all that earthly garbage and know that we are being held by something so much higher, so much stronger, so much more powerful. We do not need to worry. We can cry when we need to cry. We can break down, break out, break through when we need to. We have friends, we have family, we have God. And look around this community, look who you have in this community standing with you no matter what. And we have 12 beautiful souls this morning that we are honoring today who have said, yes, God, here I am, who have agreed to serve your church family for the next 12 months. And I want to share with you just a little bit about what they've gone through, and then I want to bring them up and honor them. But they've had a couple of weeks of, I would say, pretty intense training. Wouldn't you chaplains say that? It's when you're working with these spiritual tools and learning to walk the path that Jesus walked. It can bring a lot of stuff up. It's a space of grace and glory and joy, I would say joy. Our prayer chaplains have committed to a daily spiritual journey based on love, faith, prayer, and gratitude. They have agreed to demonstrate an active commitment to our church ministry, to hold a spiritual space of possibility for others and themselves, knowing and trusting that God is in charge. They've dedicated to a life of prayer, both with themselves and with others, to lovingly listen, to showing a genuine interest in the well-being of our congregants and our members, and to hold all that is shared in strict confidence. They've agreed to be here for us. And I do hope that you're able to not only congratulate them today, embrace them, and love them, but to call on them in times of challenge and in times of celebration. They will be calling each of us once a month, if you so desire, just to check in, say how you're doing. They will be there with you in the nursing homes, in the hospitals, at home when you need them. Thank you for agreeing to serve your church family. And before I bring them up, I would like to honor those who came before them, who have been the foundation of our prayer chaplaincy program, who have taken Leilani's work, a fellow colleague of ours whose life ministry has been this prayer chaplain program. And many of them have moved on to their next congregation. Some, like Dr. Dodge, is in Africa doing work over there. But if you are here, please stand as I call your name as an emeritus to our program. Dr. Ed Dodge, Drusilla Clausen, Lynn Lambert, Deborah Peterson, Mike Roberts, Donna Brandenburg, Susan Cardonic, Sharon Ritchie Melvin, Annie Bohannon, Marion Dutton, Annie Baumgardner, Virginia Medina, Kathy Scepter, Joanna Nordman, Patricia Wagner, Butch Schultz, Sandra Nank, Sharon Cabaza, Cricket Lee, Brendan Norquist, Mark Haslego, Mike Wilmshurst, and Gail Mara. Let us just honor you and thank you. Thank you. Thank you for paving the way for our chaplains. And let's see. Miss Nancy, will you come and help me? I would like you to give one of our purple roses as I honor each of our chaplains with their certificate. And if you'll come forward as I call your name and remain up here with us. Beth Gerald, who is also our team leader. Thank you, Miss Beth. Thank you. Jeannie Scotty, who also helps in our chaplain office. Thank you, my dear. Bless you. Ray Fitzgerald, thank you for being with us. Bless you. Thank you. Rose Gould, who is also one of our leaders and trainers. Thank you. Rita Hutton, returning champion. Thank you, Rita. Bless you. Kitty Van Sickle, also a returning prayer chaplain. Thank you. Thank you. Dee Scanlon, also a returning prayer chaplain. Thank you. Thank you. Barbara Joseph, also a returning prayer chaplain. Thank you. Victoria Geehan, one of our new chaplains. Thank you. Deborah Martin, one of our new chaplains. Thank you. Michael Bolton, also one of our new chaplains. Thank you. Bless you. And Becky Wilson, one of our returning chaplains. Thank you. And I want to read this wonderful, thank you, Nancy, this wonderful quote of Myrtle Fillmore's for you, and then we'll give you our prayer. As you learn to see the fullness of God's life and love and power and substance in others, you will know that you need not pour out your own for them. You will have the knowledge and the light to call their attention to what they already have and prompt them to use it. And so if you'll join with me our prayer for them, we love you, we bless you, we appreciate you, and we behold the Christ in you. Thank you, chaplains. Thank you, choir. We are so blessed with talent in this congregation. Thank you. Beautiful voices. And now is that time of our service where we prepare to give of our tithings and our love offerings. So I invite you to take those tithes in your hand and say with me with full intention our prayer for them together. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, all that I receive. I send forth this gift with my blessings and my